At the end of April this year, Arlene Foster announced that she would be resigning both as DUP leader and as First Minister. It followed a bit of an internal revolt against her leadership. Well, it happens to everybody in the end. And after standing down, well, what a circus it's been. Edwin Poots was elected, but he wasn't there for very long. And Arlene will now be a regular face here on The Political Correction and, more generally, on GBNews. So we welcome her with open arms because Northern Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom and should be included in our national debate. And I think for many, many years, both mainstream media and politicians have virtually treated Northern Ireland as being something of an embarrassment. I even remember John Major saying we have no selfish interest in Northern Ireland. I mean, you could have said that about Liverpool or Norwich. It really was the most extraordinary thing to have said. So, you know, the first couple of weeks, Arlene, that we've been here with the Political Correction, we've gone to Belfast. You know, we are interested in what's going on. And yes, it's an integral part of the UK, and it's great to see you here. It really is. But that's the easy bit over with.
I think one of the key things that we're trying to do is kind of demystify Northern Ireland for our viewers at home. So, I mean, I guess over to you. What are the key things that you think our viewers should know about Northern Ireland?
Well, the big issues at the moment, of course, is the protocol. And we've what really encourages me at present is the fact that so many mainstream broadcasters and print journalists are now concentrating on the protocol. They're now getting into the protocol because it is ludicrous that you need 3 veterinary certificates to bring a sandwich over from the mainland into Northern Ireland. We face a real threat at the end of this year in relation to our medicines. 2,000 different brands of medicines may be at threat of coming into Northern Ireland because of the protocol that's there. And essentially what it means is that there are checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Great Britain is treated as a third country. Now, this is the internal piece of the United Kingdom, and we have a border in that. So, therefore, it needs to go. And we were pleased to see this week that there came out a command paper from the Prime Minister to say that the circumstances were there to trigger what's called Article 16. In other words, take unilateral action to deal with these issues. But he said he wasn't going to trigger it yet. He wanted to engage with the European Union. Now, the European Union on the same day said that they weren't going to renegotiate the protocol. And I think that they immediately said that was the case. So what is the protocol about? The protocol was put in place, we are told, for 2 reasons. First of all, it was to protect the single market of the European Union so that all of these nasty things couldn't come in through the back door, through Northern Ireland, into the rest of the European Union. And, of course, the way they do that is by having these huge amounts of checks. 20% of the checks of the European Union are now between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That is incredible.
But Arlene, who is the thing that is? I mean, there are 2 big things here. Number one is, I think number one, to explain to those watching this who perhaps haven't followed it closely, that effectively you're still part of the European Union single market.
Single market.
Yeah, you know, the rest of the UK's left, you're still part of it. That's where the problem is. But who's conducting these checks?
Yeah.
Who is doing all these checks? I mean, as you say, you know, I think one of the supermarkets said that for one particular lorry load of different goods that were coming in, there were 720 forms to fill in.
That's correct.
And you can't even fill them in online. You've actually got to fill in longhand forms. Who is conducting these checks?
Our own officials. Our own officials, HMRC, are doing these checks because they are mandated to by the protocol. And what we're saying to our government is that there's a different way to do that. Base it on risk. Is there a risk to the single market by a lorry load of goods coming into Sainsbury's and Ballymena from GB? No, there's no risk to the single market from that coming in. So why are we doing all of these checks? So there needs to be a complete change. And of course, the second reason that we had the protocol was to protect the peace in Northern Ireland. There's not one unionist politician in Northern Ireland that supports the protocol. They all want to see it gone. So actually the balance created by the Belfast Agreement has been skewed by the protocol and it needs to be sorted out.
Consent.
Yes.
This was the big word, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, when Blair was negotiating the agreement, consent is what it was all about. And I think this is where perhaps you've got a very powerful case.
Yes.
But I'm just at a mystery to understand. You know, because some little official in Brussels says jump, that the whole of UK officialdom seems to be so delighted to do so. I mean, surely the answer is to apply a degree of common sense to all of this.
Yeah,
where is the common sense?
Where is the great European proportionality, Nigel? That's what my question is, because it's a European law concept, proportionality. Why aren't we applying that to the checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Of course, I would say there's no need for any checks coming from Great Britain into Northern Ireland because we're part of the same country.
Quite extraordinary. So what happens next?
Well, what happens next, we're told that Lord Frost, who's our chief negotiator in these matters, is going to speak with the European Union to try and deal with these issues. But frankly, the circumstances are there to trigger Article 16 to take the unilateral action. And until that happens, there's still ongoing damage for Northern Ireland. I mean, the Marks and Spencer's boss last week said that we were going to have less choice at Christmas and it was going to cost us more as well to have our Christmas.
Is the danger... I'm just trying to... I mean, look, I'm with you. Scrap the blooming thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was very unhappy with the withdrawal agreement in terms of Northern Ireland and fisheries. They were the two things that I thought were dreadful. You know, for balance, I would say that Boris Johnson was dealt a very bad hand by Theresa May.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But I was very unhappy with it. Yeah. You were unhappy with it. Yeah. But if we say, look, we're not prepared to put up with this. This is absolutely ludicrous. There is, as you said, no proportionality. We've effectively annexed part of the United Kingdom, and as soon as you do that, you weaken the Union. You make the argument with Scotland very much more difficult for us all to stay together. But the risk, I guess, is some sort of sanctions that get put back on us by the French and the European Union. Yeah,
and that is the risk, because if we take unilateral action, you can bet your bottom dollar that there is going to be some reaction from the French and from the Germans. But, I mean, there is a mechanism within the protocol to deal with these issues. Under Article 13.8, you can renegotiate the protocol. So let's get into that and let us say to the European Union, if you are seriously interested in keeping the peace in Northern Ireland and keeping the balance in Northern Ireland, then you should engage, and you should engage in a meaningful way.
Yes, and there must not be a hard border, unless, of course, the boss of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, decides she can put a border in because of the vaccine mess.
And you know, Nigel, I just want to make this point. In 1993, the single market came in, and that's when the hard border went. It wasn't under the Belfast Agreement. No. It was not under the Belfast Agreement, and there's a really big misunderstanding about the Belfast Agreement and borders. The single market was the thing that took away borders in terms of trade on the island of Ireland. And, of course, Sinn Féin voted against the single market, as we all know.
Well, in those days, Sinn Féin, of course, were very, very Eurosceptic.
Correct.
And I'm sure it's got nothing to do with the money that their MEPs and staff have been making in Brussels. I'm absolutely sure of that. But the complete change of position from Sinn Féin has been extraordinary. Yeah. Now, the past in Northern Ireland is never very far away.
Sure.
And whilst we have an agreement, the Belfast Agreement, and things have certainly been better, much better for ordinary folk living in Northern Ireland. Something this week that I thought was fairly extraordinary was the horrible memory of the Omagh bomb, which was a most shocking event, and some indications this week that perhaps it could have been avoided.
Well, the Omagh bomb, of course, came after the Belfast Agreement. It was in the August of 1998, and actually the proposals that the government are talking about at this present moment in time wouldn't cover the Omagh bomb because it's just about pre-1998 agreement. So the Omagh bomb was a horrendous. It was the biggest civilian loss of life and a horrendous time. I remember it very, very well. And back 8 years ago, Michael Gallagher, who lost his son, took a case to the High Court saying that he wanted a public inquiry. He had asked for one from government. It had been refused, so he went to the High Court. 8 years later, he gets the judgment. I mean, that is unreal to have to wait 8 years for a judgment. That's the first thing to say about that. But the judgment has basically, it hasn't come out in full yet, but the summary of it is that the judge believes that it is plausible that it could have been prevented. Now, Michael and others will say very clearly that they don't blame the people who planted the bomb are the people responsible for the atrocity, and that, of course, was dissident Republicans. But they want to know more about the circumstances. They want to get at the truth, and that's why this judge has said, whilst he hasn't pointed to a public inquiry, there needs to be a reinvestigation at a UK level, but also, interestingly, he said, at a Republic of Ireland level as well, because there was a lot of cross-border traffic in relation to the bomb.
Yeah, we'll see.
So what do you think the future looks like for Northern Ireland and for the peace process?
Well, I mean, I'm always optimistic about Northern Ireland because I know its people and I know the brilliant people that they are. They're so innovative. They have been through a lot over this past 40 years, but still managed to have that spirit about them. So I'm very positive about what we're doing in the future, about our cybersecurity, the enterprises that are there. We're actually leading in that technology. We have so much going for us. So I'm very positive about the future, but we do have to deal with some of the hangovers from our past, and we cannot do that by wiping out the prospect of justice for people. And look, when we go back to 1998, the seeds of what's happening today are very much there because, of course, in 1998, the terrorists were allowed to leave prison. And that, of course, was a corruption of the criminal justice system. Let's be honest about that. And then we had the on-the-run letters from Tony Blair where he promised some terrorists who were outside of the jurisdiction that they could come back and they wouldn't face prosecution. So that was a very painful thing to have to go through as well. And now if somebody is convicted in a criminal court of law of something before 1998, they serve less than 2 years. Less than 2 years. Because that's part of the agreement as well. So there's a lot that has happened in the criminal justice system. But I think the proposals now that are being talked about, there's a real need for the Secretary of State to engage with the victims, to take their lead on what they see as possible. I acknowledge that it's very difficult to get a criminal prosecution through the courts. Some of the recent cases have shown that as well. They have all collapsed. However, I think to say that we're taking away any sense of justice for you is terribly, terribly difficult.
Yeah.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.